To all the drivers out there delivering holiday cheer across our great country, season's greetings and a huge thank you from the Allen Lund Company.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
OOIDA Foundation research analyst Andrew King stops by to go over their most recent market update report. Then he takes a few swings at the American Trucking Association's newest claims about the Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers Act. Yesterday, we started a conversation with Bryan of the Chrome Shop Mafia about seating. We'll continue that conversation today with information about the basics you should have in any seat, what options are popular, and how seats have advanced. And finally, it's tough to understand all the new advances in technology and what they mean for you, but passwords? That's something we all have experience with. However, you may be leaving the front door open to hackers if you're not doing a few simple things. Jason Lutes and Tim Storhoff of OOIDA's IT department provide some useful advice. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has removed 10 electronic logging devices from its list of approved devices. That list includes the CI ELD logs, the ELD2 Go, the ELD for trucking, the eLog 365, Golden ELD, Power Trucks ELD, Steer Right ELD, Truck X ELD, TST1 ELD, and World Trucking ELD. FMCSA says revoked devices no longer comply with minimum requirements. Carriers and drivers who have the ELDs on the revoked list must discontinue use immediately and revert to paper logs or logging software to record required hours of service data and replace the revoked ELDs with compliant ones before January 30th. Volvo Trucks North America and Mack Trucks have issued a recall after discovering an issue with vehicle speed control. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Volvo is recalling more than 1,000 Volvo VN trucks model year 2023-24. Meanwhile, Mack Trucks is recalling more than 850 Mack Anthem, Granite, LR, and Terra Pro trucks model years 2023 and 2024 as well. In affected trucks, the engine may not return to idle within 2 seconds if the accelerator pedal position sensor becomes disconnected. That can lead to a loss of vehicle control, increasing the risk of a crash. As of right now, Volvo and Mack say they don't have a fix for the problem, but add they're working on it. Owner notification letters are set to go out in January. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association wants to make sure motor carriers don't suffer from changes to the safety fitness determination process. That message was delivered to FMCSA in formal comments in response to an advance notice of proposed rulemaking. The agency was asking for feedback on the current safety fitness determination process and possible changes. OOIDA said it's clear that the current process does need revisions. The association wrote that the safety fitness determination structure, quote, has not been a reliable method for properly determining a motor carrier's fitness to operate, adding that most of the shortcomings relate to the inaccuracy and inconsistency of the data that is collected and analyzed during a safety investigation. As it stands right now, a safety fitness determination is given to a trucking company only after a compliance review is conducted. In pursuit of improvements, OOIDA suggested less reliance on the Compliance, Safety, Accountability, and Safety Measurement System programs. The association said CSA and SMS have completely failed in their objective to reduce injuries, fatalities, and crashes, something OOIDA said won't change until the system incentivizes actual safety performance instead of regulatory compliance. According to the regulations.gov website, FMCSA received 176 comments on their notice. Now the agency will review the comments before determining whether to move forward with a formal proposal. The chair of a House subcommittee on workforce protections has renewed his call to withdraw the nomination of acting Labor Secretary Julie Su. Su was nominated for the post by President Biden in February and went through a confirmation hearing in April, but her bid has yet to come up for a vote in the full Senate. Her bid to shed the acting title took a hit when Senator Joe Manchin said in July that he planned to vote against Sue's nomination. Representative Kevin Kiley of California has been a vocal detractor of Sue's. This week, during a House subcommittee hearing, he said it's high time the White House nominate someone else.
Today, I am again calling on President Biden to end the tenure of the now longest-serving acting secretary in United States history. The president must nominate a secretary who will perform his or her duties competently, who will be on the side of American workers, and who can win Senate approval. Only then will the Labor Department be free of the legal uncertainty that currently clouds its important work.
Much of the opposition in Congress towards Sue stems from her role in the implementation of California's Assembly Bill 5, a controversial law that makes it extremely difficult for a worker to be considered an independent contractor. 1 month from today, every commercial truck operating in the state of California will be required to have and use an electronic logging device. The California Highway Patrol is behind the new rule that goes into effect on January 1st. It requires intrastate truckers in the Golden State to use an ELD to record a driver's on-duty hours. Some exceptions are allowed, such as with trucks manufactured before model year 2000. Many other states have intrastate ELD regs on the books as well. They are in addition to federal interstate ELD requirements. 3 rest areas along Interstate 70 in Ohio have shut down for a year, closing off a number of truck parking options. The Ohio Department of Transportation says it's so crews can demolish and rebuild facilities at all 3. The closures affect both rest areas on I-70 in Belmont County at mile marker 210 and the westbound rest area in Muskegum County at mile marker 163. A Belmont County official told the Times Leader that the project will be rough for truck drivers because there's not another rest area with parking for 100 miles. She said the lots of the 2 Belmont County rest areas shutting down were full just about every night. And finally, the OOIDA Foundation is asking truckers to take part in 2 new surveys on significant issues in the trucking industry. The first has to do with detention time, as research analyst Andrew King explains.
We want everyone's opinion and view, experience of detention time, because we know that it impacts people differently depending on even what you haul or what area of the country you're running in or what type of shippers and receivers that you're working with. All that makes an impact and difference on detention. And so if we can gather all that information, the better for getting this issue in front of lawmakers and regulators.
The survey asks a number of questions to gather data, like what kind of hours of service do you operate in, and how do you define detention time, among others. The other new survey out of the OOIDA Foundation is an annual one related to freight rates. The foundation already puts out a monthly report, but King says that sometimes doesn't paint a full picture.
You know, it's government data or maybe one specific company's data, and that might not necessarily be what's happening for our members. And so we want to get a better understanding of what's going on with them, their own personal experience, and we can use that to help fight against certain, let's say, arguments. For example, I'll give you one. Here, just recently, we have the Got Truckers Act, right? And ATA put out a number of statements trying to refute that. They're in opposition against it. And one thing they'd like to say is that, the pay for truck drivers, the average truck driver out there, is actually really well, and so we don't need this. We don't need something like that. Well, we have data to show that is not true, and obviously the market goes in cycles. But not everyone is compensated to the level that they claim that they are. They're only surveying, a certain set of carriers, and they're not getting the industry as a whole. And so something like this is really helpful to say, hey, what you're saying is it's not true.
Both the detention time and freight rate surveys have been sent out to OOIDA members, so check your inboxes. We'll hear more from King about the Foundation's market report for October and a research paper rebutting ATA's claims about the Got Truckers Act a little later on in the program. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Next, Andrew King of the OOIDA Foundation offers a rebuttal to the ATA's claims about the Got Truckers Act. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline now, welcome back. The OOIDA Foundation has been busy as usual. Not only do we have new analysis of market conditions, courtesy of the Foundation's October Market Update Report, we've also got a rebuttal to some of the claims we've been hearing about overtime pay out there. With no time to waste, let's welcome in OOIDA Foundation research analyst Andrew King. Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing great. Always good to see you. You always bring a fresh perspective to everything that's going on out there. Let's get right to it here with the October market update. We can get into the specific load types here in just a moment, but overall, it looks to be basically more of the same here. I'm going to ask you if we're seeing any movement, though, with regard to the market, whether it be with rates or load-to-truck ratios or demand or capacity, basically any of it. Are we seeing anything out there that may kind of give us some positive feelings, I guess?
Not exactly. Like you said, it's kind of more the same. It's more of a down direction as far as load-to-truck ratios are concerned, though there is some flattening in some areas, in the same kind of with rates. Of course, usually during this time of year, you're going to have a peak. Obviously, as we get into December shipping season and what have you, everything for the holidays but unfortunately, that really hasn't manifested the same way this year. I mean, it's not a total loss per se, but obviously it's not where we would hope it to be. And so, like we've talked about before, that the spread between spot and contract for all of the types that we discuss, van and flatbed and reefer, they have all gotten worse. That spread has grown, and that's not what we want to see. Hopefully, my hopes are that we'll see some change with December and January just because of seasonality will take over, and that should be fairly strong, but it will not be obviously the normal season that we expect during this time of year. And our hopes are, of course, that in the first half of 2024, things will start to change and shift. That will give us some hope as far as demand goes.
One thing we were talking about earlier, if we were looking for a bright spot, is that there are regional differences out there. Obviously, this report looks at the huge picture, the overall picture. But when you start to kind of pick at different regions and different areas, some are, it looks like, doing better than others.
That is true. That's a very good point. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's something kind of new that we've added to the market update as we've gotten a little bit more data from DAT. And yes, there are certain regions that definitely are doing better than others. And the one that probably stands out the most, to me anyway, is the Pacific Northwest. You obviously have a fall produce season going in full swing there, and that also kind of generates freight in other areas, not just for refrigerated trailers, but also van and even flatbed to some extent, as we've talked about before in previous episodes or recordings. And so that really is the bright spot, I would say, right now. Things are going fairly well there as far as demand and rates are concerned.
And you kind of alluded to the load types out there and kind of what we're seeing there, but to run through each of them real quickly here, maybe with a couple highlights or I guess perhaps lowlights considering everything that we're seeing out there. Van, reefer, flatbed, what kind of stands out to you with those?
Sure. Well, I'll just stick with the load-to-truck ratio. The rates have declined for spot and stayed mostly flat for contract, but they really haven't changed too much. We're talking about pennies, but the load-to-truck ratio has kind of had some more significant swings. So for van, it plummeted 24% month over month, which is pretty low, and then year over year, that's down 27%. And a new feature that we added in the charts is you can kind of see the 5-year average for a trend and kind of see where we are, and obviously we're quite a bit below that. Switching over to flatbed, an 8.4% month-over-month drop which basically wiped out some of the last month's increases, and the ratio is almost 50% lower than where we were last year. That obviously is a big issue.
Yeah.
And of course, this time of year, you're going to see a huge drop-off in loads posted in flatbed just because it's this time of year and not a lot of people want to do that sort of thing.
Sure. Yep.
And then just lastly, reefer real quick, 14% drop month over month, and we are 42% lower year over year. And so load to truck ratio really is important because it kind of does drive where the rates are. So it is still a sad tale.
Yeah.
But as we said, the kind of the bright spot is there are some markets that are doing better than others.
Yeah, there's money to be made out there for sure. But it is lean times, salad days, I guess, as they might say. 2024, we're looking forward, hopefully, and we keep saying this, but we look forward to here in the first half some signs that we're getting back to where we want to be. So we'll keep an eye on that. Let's get into overtime pay here and shift gears. For a little background, we recently saw 2 new bills introduced in Congress. They both got the same name, the Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers, or GOT Truckers Act. In short, this would repeal an exemption that dates back to 1938 in the Fair Labor Standards Act, essentially guaranteeing that truckers would get paid for all the hours they work. That's a very short summary of what this whole conversation is about. We've seen the arguments against this move. The foundation has kind of pulled out its myth versus fact worksheet here to kind of go over some of these talking points and kind of rebutting them. I want to ask you just as an overall question here, the biggest misconception, you've got a lot of myths that you kind of strike down with a bat here. A lot of misrepresentations out there, a lot of misconceptions. I'm not going to ask you to go over all of them, but are there a couple maybe that stand out to you here? As you look through all of them?
Yeah, there definitely are a few. And this basically is in response to a white sheet that ATA put out of their own myths and facts. And, of course, ATA, if you're not aware, they're in opposition to the GOT Truckers Act, obviously. And so they have put out some information here. And it's somewhat difficult to just pick a couple because they really are pretty dumb. These statements are very dumb.
Don't hold back, Andrew.
I am very surprised that they would even write this or publish it or even put it out there. To me, it's so foolish. But for example, one that we hear a lot and we alluded to before we started recording is just that what ATA says is this change will keep tired and unsafe truck drivers off the road and increase safety. And their point is saying that it won't do that. In fact, it'll make things more unsafe. And that just doesn't make any sense. And their point that they're trying to make is that if you pay truckers overtime, then they'll want to work more, and so that they will actually be more tired, more fatigued, that sort of thing. But there is gobs and gobs of research, especially from our friend Michael Belzer, who have stated very clearly that there is kind of a threshold that if you reach a certain amount of pay, truckers actually would rather have leisure time than just work constantly. And so if you reach that pay, then really the incentive to have to work longer or harder isn't there anymore. And so it actually will increase safety. And that's definitely our view, and research would back that up. Another issue really kind of surrounds this idea of just pay and driver shortage and that sort of thing. One of the myths that ATA is kind of putting out there really is that this will lower driver pay.
Yeah, I've heard this one a lot actually, and it kind of makes sense, I guess, on the surface. But the argument essentially is that you make this change, carriers, companies are just going to adjust their pay rates so that they are still reaping the benefits and still giving truckers the short end of the stick.
Basically, yes, that they will be forced to lower driver pay in order to cover the expenses. Now, like you said, on the surface, maybe that makes sense, but it really doesn't, especially in the idea of a supposed long-term driver shortage. If you have a shortage of drivers, you have to pay them more to attract more labor supply. So lowering driver pay when you supposedly have a driver shortage already is really the opposite of what you should do, and it makes no sense. And the big argument that we make in general is that, drivers are paid by the mile. And because of that, that means that there are many hours of the day that they are on duty and they are not receiving any compensation for that. So basically, their time is devalued. Shippers and receivers, it doesn't matter. They don't need to get that driver out of their dock. They don't need to get them loaded, unloaded, that sort of thing, because basically their time doesn't matter. And so we want to fight against that. And that's really part of the purpose behind the GOT Truckers Act, is to make sure that drivers' time is valued and that they're paid for all the hours that they work. And that is what they deserve. I mean, any position, labor position, job, basically, will pay you for the hours that you work.
Yeah.
Except for trucking. Sometimes they're working 50, 60 or more hours.
70, yeah.
Or above that,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
what the hours of service regulations actually do is they just regulate the amount of hours that you can drive. So you could technically be working a lot more than that, and you're not getting paid for any of that because you're not driving. You're not earning money per mile.
Yeah.
And so we want to basically right that wrong.
We spoke with Representative Jeff Van Drew recently. He's the sponsor of this bill in the House, and he essentially made the same points that you're making there, that it's time to pay people for the time they put in at work. I think it's also interesting to look at this from a kind of a trickle-down effect, because you mentioned something there about shippers and receivers not basically caring if they're wasting truck drivers' time.
Correct.
If that is coming out of their bottom line, they are going to move people out and in faster, which by extension is going to have an effect on the supply chain, on detention times, on all of these things that are all kind of baked into the cake right now. So we would see some effects of that.
Exactly.
Right?
So for a carrier to cover that additional expense, because it will be an additional expense, they'll have to kind of bake that into their contract rates that they are already making with shippers and receivers. So they'll have leverage, in fact, to increase rates. And that thereby trickling down should pass through to the driver and benefit them more, because every hour they have, they're literally getting paid. And I know one of the things ATA claims is that drivers get paid even detention time. Well, that is absolutely not true. Mm-hmm. Some do, but even those who do, it's like pennies compared to what they're losing opportunities to obtain more loads because they're sitting waiting at a dock. So in the long run, they're actually losing money. Maybe they're getting paid some, but it's not enough to compensate for what they're losing.
Yeah.
So again, this bill would help to alleviate this issue.
And it's bipartisan in the House, not yet bipartisan in the Senate. Again, we've got this bill in both chambers of Congress right now. We encourage everybody out there to check out fightingfortruckers.com. You can reach out to your representative, encourage them to sign on to this, what seems like a very common sense piece of legislation. This white paper has so much in it, and we're not going to be able to get to all of it, Andrew, but what are the plans for this? I mean, is it going to go out to lawmakers and staff offices, or where's it going?
Yes. I mean, we will put this up on our website. It'll be under our white papers, and we also hand that to our government affairs team for them to use and spread around on the Hill to kind of show, the support for this bill, and to also break down some of these false accusations or things that people throw out saying the GOT Truckers Act will do or somehow damage or diminish driver pay or safety and those sort of things. That's absolutely not true.
There's a lot of that out there, I should say, Andrew. We appreciate you coming by, as always, to give us the facts and the straight scoop on all of it.
Thank you for having me.
Our thanks to Andrew King of the OOIDA Foundation. Check out the monthly report and that white paper for yourself at ooida.com/foundation. We've got to take a break, but we're back right after this.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine Vibratech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with Vibratech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off TruckStop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Landline Now. Thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Mark Reddick. It's time for another installment of Mafia Secrets, Advice from the Boss Man, with Bryan Martin of 4 State Trucks, home of the Chrome Shop Mafia. Once again, I'm here in Studio A with our producer and resident gearhead Barry Spillman, and we are on the line with Bryan Martin, the boss man at Joplin, Missouri's Chrome Shop Mafia. Bryan, how you doing?
Howdy, fellas. Doing pretty good. How about yourselves?
Very well, thank you. And we're going to continue a conversation we started a little while ago, which is seats, because this is something really, really important to people when they're looking at, possible upgrades to their truck, or even just speccing one out that they're going to buy. And we talked about a lot of the stuff like the covering on there and some of the technology, and I'm kind of curious, what are some of the basics in there, more basic things in terms of options that you want to look at?
Well, we get we cater to all customers, but a lot of our customers drive the old long square hooded trucks, Kenworths, Peterbilts, some of the Freightliner Classics, and a lot of them want to ride low. One of the first things, if we get a customer looking at a seat, we ask them, do they want a standard base or do they want a low base, so that they can play the part and look cool, but still have a little bit of air in the suspension so that you're not, the alternative to that before the low base seat is we all had standard base and we just run them flat, no air. Well, no air equals no suspension. So you're feeling every little chug hole in the road. And a lot of people did that for a long time, and that's all we had before. Every seat manufacturer now pretty much offers the standard base, which comes in all the new trucks, or you can get a lot of times the low base, which is going to let you, the easiest way I know to explain it is if you like the ride height of a standard base fully deflated, then you want a low base seat so that you can have that low mechanical base to get it down close to the floorboard, but by the time you put some air in it, you're up there about where you were deflated in a standard base. And some guys say they're just more comfortable that way, this, that, and the other. I guess if you're 6'7" or 6'4", maybe I get it, but I think at the end of the day, they just really want to look cool and, just barely see the top of their hat there through the door glass or over the top of the windshield, so to speak, at times. But we do sell a tremendous amount of the low base seats. Another request is a lot of fellas or a lot of gals, they don't want the high back. For the past 25 years, everybody wanted a high back seat with dual armrest. And they still very much want the dual armrest. But a lot of people want a mid-back seat. And one benefit, the first one that pops to your mind, if I'm wearing a cowboy hat, I can't even put my head anywhere close to the backrest if I've got a high back seat. So that's one thing, as, rare as the actual situation to need that may be. But a lot of times, you kind of want to just push against the backrest, and you want to be able to move your head around and kind of push your shoulders a little bit up and over the top of the seat and just kind of stretch. And it suits some people. They like that feel ergonomically more so than the high back. So we do sell a lot of mid-back seats as well as the low base. So there's two of the very basic. That's the first questions we're going to ask a customer when they come in looking for a new seat.
Bryan, here's a question for a customer that's willing to spend a little more extra money on it, especially if they're, over the road going across the country and they're in that truck, hours and hours and hours constantly all the time and need something like that. Last time we talked about the Bose seats. I don't even know if they're manufactured anymore, but the concept of the electromagnets that actually counteracted the moving of the truck up and down was really an interesting thing. Has anybody else come up with an alternative to that, a competition to Bose?
You know, most of your aftermarket seats are far superior today to what we had access to just 10 years ago. We sell Bostrom, we sell National, we sell Seats Incorporated, we sell Needler, and we sell Sears seats. But a company out of Ohio called Gray Mag, they have launched, and I'm not even sure it was necessarily launched recently, but it's actually available recently, is a seat that they're calling the Steady Ride. And it is very comparable to the old Bose seat that you were talking about, which was a very sophisticated, technologically advanced seat. The Gray Mag Steady Ride is actually available today and at thousands of dollars less than what the old Bose seat was selling for years ago.
But the concept is real similar.
It is. It's one, you can see them at Louisville. I think we'll have one here at Four State Trucks soon in the showroom. But you know, they've got it bolted to a platform that is just vibrating like mad. I mean, this thing is jumping all over the place, but yet with air in the seat and someone's sitting on the seat, even though that where that base is bolted to the platform is moving all over the place, you know, up and down, inch or better at a time, and just vibrating like nuts to simulate a very rough road. The cushion where you're actually seated, barely moving. And you can carry on a conversation without your voice shaky and vibrating because that base is literally taking 90% of all that distortion and bumps out of the ride, so that the person sitting in the seat doesn't feel it. It's probably one of the most impressive seating displays I've seen in 10 years.
I'm curious, Bryan, are they using a similar technology to accomplish that the Bose did, or have they come up with something else that achieves that result?
Well, I'm not really that educated on it to speak in that detail. I don't think there's any electromagnetic maybe features to it, but don't quote me on that. I think it's just the most innovative, ultimately ergonomically designed base assembly with, you know, the right airbag configuration, the right gas shocks, the right adjustment abilities, to where that seat is just doing everything it should be doing and everything it can be doing to take virtually all the bumps out of the highway.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was extremely impressive. And if I was somebody that had a sensitive back or had surgeries or things of that, I would definitely check into that Gray Mag Steady Ride and learn more about it. But, you know, that's something that I think in some aspects rivals the Bose seat, but is actually, I mean, still, it's a very expensive seat, don't get me wrong, but it's not a $6,000 seat.
Yeah, it does make a difference.
It sure does. And then, you know, a lot of folks over the years, we've came in, and when they say, you know, hey, we kind of suffer and prone to, you know, a sore back, we've tried to steer them to the Sears line of seating. It's also a very well-built seat, and when you pick that thing up, you can just tell there's a lot of steel. There's a lot of oomph to that seat. Like, they didn't cut any corners when they built it. The Bostrom has been one of our best-selling seats for years. Seats Incorporated has the Pinnacle, which we stock here, and so do a lot of other chrome shops. But that Seats Incorporated Pinnacle is an impressive, almost infinitely adjustable seat that I don't think I've ever sold one to anybody or had a salesman sell one to anybody that didn't really love it. It's up there. It's well over $1,000. But man, that is a fine seat. So there's some good options out there, whether you're spending $750 or whether you're spending $1,400. There's some really good, impressive options that once you get that in, get it bolted down, get some air in it, get it all adjusted to your body, you're going to be all smiles on just about any of these aftermarket seats we've talked about.
You guys owe it to yourself to have a seat like that.
Exactly. I mean, if it's this or some snazzy toolbox hanging under my trailer, or some, crazy deck plate, or even a sound system, or, things of that nature. I mean, what better place to invest than where you're literally going to be sitting for hours and hours and hours a day, which turns into hours and hours and hours a week. I mean, it is your office chair. It is your workplace. Is that seat, and you probably can't literally spend too much on one. Whatever your budget can afford, I would encourage you, not just because we sell seats, we sell a lot of other stuff that we'd like to have you look at. But man, don't cut corners or pull back on that particular category if you can keep from it.
You mentioned how impressively adjustable that last one is. What are some of the ways that you should look for any seat to be adjustable?
Well, the air lumbars, which have come a long ways and are almost standard equipment on aftermarket seats. They're not only just in the backrest like they were when they first came out 10 years ago. Now you could have, 3 lumbars in the lower cushion and 3 air lumbar switches for the backrest. There's different lengths of armrest. There's even different lengths of lower cushion. So if you're a taller person and you got more distance, from your hip bone to your knee bone, there's seats that have a longer, so that your feet aren't like hanging there or dangling, so to speak. But by the same token, they're not like your knees aren't arched up. There's seat bases or seat cushions that can be more configured to your body type. There's all kinds of gas shocks to work in conjunction with that airbag in the lower base, and even some of those are adjustable to your liking. Or, if you get on a job site where it's really rough, you can crank that thing down to get a little bit stiffer ride, so you're not up and down quite as much as you were just, rolling down a normal 4-lane highway. That's a few of the adjustments there. That Pinnacle, you can not only recline the backrest like you can on most aftermarket seats, but you can actually adjust the pitch of the lower cushion. So it's just really a cool seat, and a lot of adjustability and tailorability to your style, to your body type, to your liking, with a lot of these aftermarket options.
We've got about a minute left, Bryan, and I did want to ask you one other thing here. We've talked a lot about what you want to look for in these seats. Are there things that you should be avoiding if you're looking at an aftermarket seat?
I don't really think so. I can't think of anything that would be, oh gosh, stay away from that. I mean, the seat manufacturers have listened to customer feedback over the years, and they've did away with the stuff that was either outdated and it was more advanced and there were better options now, or were snake oil and really didn't really do much. All those are pretty much gone. I would just say set your budget and get the very best, most feature-loaded seat you can for your budget. I know one thing that people occasionally ask for was a swivel seat. Haven't really seen a lot of those over the years, or a lot of them that sold well or really were in high demand. So I don't think swivel's a viable option largely, but just about anything else you want, colors, styles, base height, mid-back, high-back, genuine leather, semi-leather, cloth, it's all out there to be suited to your liking.
Now I want one in my house.
Hey, office chairs that were truck seats on top, we've been able to get a few of those over the years from some of our seat manufacturers, and they are mighty comfy. I'll tell you that, because we've probably got a half dozen of them running around here at 4 state trucks, and nobody wants to give those up for office chairs.
There you go. Well, Bryan, we're out of time, but it's an interesting topic, and thank you for talking with us.
You bet, guys. Anytime. We'll see you later.
If you have questions for Bryan Martin, you can email them to Bossman on Landline Now at ChromeShopMafia.com. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive, Our job is to help with everything else.
Welcome back here in the home stretch of our program today. Scott Thompson with you, and we're going to spend the remainder of our time with another crash course in technology to keep you and your stuff safe online. Hopefully that's the goal here. News you can use if you will. And joining us to break down what we need to know, our returning champion, Jason Lutes. Hello, Jason.
Hey, Scott. How's it going?
Good. And Tim Storhoff. Hey, Tim.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Both Jason and Tim work in OOIDA's IT department. Good to see you both. Appreciate you both being here. Lots to get to here, so we'll jump right in. I do want to take a step back, though, because we have talked a few times with you before, Jason specifically, covering online security, covering things that people need to know. A quick refresher might be helpful for people out there just to kind of go over what we've talked about before as we lead into this conversation today.
The last couple of sessions we've had, we talked about VPN usage, which of course is the virtual private network, which basically masks your presence online. So somebody can't intercept your messages or hack into your phone or whatnot. And the use of free public Wi-Fi, because you're basically out in the open and you have no idea who's sitting there just waiting for someone that has low security on their phone or their laptop. And of course, which leads us into password security. That is directly affected by all of that.
Yeah.
First off, we're going to talk about the complexity of your password, what to do, what not to do. And then we're going to talk about some two-factor authentication and how that works hand in hand.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that too, because when we talk about, VPNs and firewalls and all this other stuff, quite frankly, I think it goes over a lot of people's heads, understandably so, I think, because it's kind of complicated. We're talking about passwords here, which I think is like level one online security, which, I mean, everybody's got a password out there. Everybody uses passwords, dozens of them at this point, probably, with all the different accounts that all of us have. And this is the one thing that you can do to really make sure that your stuff is safe. And you talked about the different things that you want to do to make sure that your stuff is safe with regard to passwords. And you kind of mentioned complexity there. I know randomizing passwords. You want a different password for every single account, ideally, right?
Absolutely.
A lot of people don't do that, though.
Yeah, it's a tough and rather annoying thing to have to do because if you have 50 accounts online, whether it's your credit cards, bank, or doctor's offices these days, using the same password, and if somebody gets that password, they have access to virtually everything.
They're all compromised, right?
Absolutely.
So what you want to do, Tim, right, is you want to make sure that they are all randomized. And that doesn't mean just changing one number at the end of each account password, right? Or
right.
one letter, right? You
Absolutely,
want to make sure you've got
yeah.
random letters and numbers and symbols in there, right?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, you don't want to use anything like password 1 or, something called like let me in as a password or anything. It's best to do like longer strings of password, like 12 to 14 characters, a combination of letters, numbers, and symbols. And that really is the best way to go. There are software programs out there that you can get a generated password.
Yeah, you can even go online to generate them as well.
Yes.
But I've got an iPhone, and it will do that. It will generate unique passwords for each account.
Yep.
And it stores them all, which maybe that's not safe too. I don't know. They're all in one place. But, it does help to have some help there with these different sites that can generate passwords for you. Two-factor authentication, I know, is a huge thing that I keep hearing about. That's another part of this too. Can you just explain for people out there that maybe haven't messed with two-factor authentication, what it is, what does it do?
So two-factor authentication works hand in hand with your password, with your login and password. Let's say someone randomly guesses your password and they get into your account. If you have it turned on to check and make sure it's you every single time, you will either get a text message or through an authentication app such as Microsoft Authenticator to verify it's you. It'll send a message to your phone that only you know, and it generally times out about 30 seconds to a minute to make sure it's not just sitting around waiting for somebody to get into your phone, let's say.
Absolutely.
So when you log into your, let's say, bank account and you have that turned on, it'll send you a message, whether it's, like I said, the authentication app or a text message with a code. You enter that in, and then it'll officially allow you in so that whoever's out on the internet that has your password can't always get in.
If they don't have your phone or any way to check that message,
exactly,
they can't get in, right?
And another thing, and I found this out personally, a way to check and see if your password's been compromised is if they do get it, and then you suddenly get this message that somebody's coming in. Well, now you know to change your password, and of course you decline it.
Yeah.
So
don't hit accept.
Exactly. It's
whatever you do.
A very, very good thing to do.
Yeah.
And I will admit it's kind of annoying, but I would rather get annoyed than destroyed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. And just, real quick here, password managers, that's a pretty good way to go about making sure two-factor authentication. These are two ways that you can get the randomization and get the two-factor authentication protection that we're talking about.
Yes. And to touch base on that, I will say this, make sure the company you go with has a good reputation. Because if you have a password manager out there that's free or for $20 and you have never heard of them, they may be vulnerable. The chances are that they may have a vulnerability in their software. So Google, Apple, stick with the big guys who do this a lot.
Yeah. And as you said there, it's complicated, it's confusing, and it's a pain, quite frankly, to have dozens of different passwords. But if you have that password manager, it certainly helps. Don't put it on a Post-it note and stick it on your laptop or something either, which, again, I understand why people do it, but don't do that. We read and hear about all these hacks all the time. In the news, we hear about people's data getting compromised, stolen, what have you. I guess a basic question is, how does it happen? Hackers obviously will use any tool that they can get their hands on to get your information. But what are some of the common ways that they're doing that?
Absolutely. One of them in particular is called shoulder surfing. And that's pretty much when you're sitting in a coffee shop or somewhere to where you have a Wi-Fi access and you're paying your bill or you're logging into something that one of your websites and somebody happens to be near you, either looking over your shoulder.
Taking notes and writing down what your password and your login.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
And that would be obviously in a public place. You have to, do you bring a shield with you or
well,
just be aware that there may be people looking and kind of hunch over a little bit or something? Or
well, there are a couple of ways that you can prevent that.
Yeah.
And one way is to be very aware of who's looking looking around at you. Or you could have a screen black screen protector type thing.
Yeah, so they can't see what you're doing.
Absolutely.
There. That's kind of the easiest way,
yes.
right? There are other more complex ways out there. I know we've only got about a minute, but what other ways are there for hackers to get you?
Well, to follow up on that, the more of an amplified version of that is called a brute force, where instead of a person trying to hack into your machine, you have a series of computers that are taking all of these random passwords or dictionary passwords and just basically trying it as many thousands or potentially millions of times very, very quickly. Until they hit it. Now, there are ways to remedy that. And one of the ways is to, if it's available, turn on password attempts. What that is let's say, for instance, you have an online account and after 3 attempts, it locks your account. If that's available, turn it on so these cannot happen.
Yep.
As long as it doesn't lock you out. We all forget our passwords sometimes.
It will lock you out, but you can generally have your phone or an email address or something associated with it as a backup. So you want to make sure those backups are in place.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then, of course, the other would be keyloggers. Now, keyloggers are generally in malicious software, or they could be in a software that you need and it actually works and functions the way it's supposed to, but it's in there more of like a Trojan horse.
Gotcha.
And it literally records your keystrokes and sends them back to a certain location.
Yeah.
And then now they have it, and you had no idea it happened. And you thought, and everything's functioning fine for you, so you have no indication.
It's a wild world out there. Tim and Jason, good advice. Hopefully we've helped people along the way here as we continue these conversations that we have. We appreciate you coming by, sharing your expertise with us.
Anytime, Scott.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
And thanks to you for listening to Landline Now. That's our show for today, but we're back soon with another, so we'll see you then.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad.
A son.
A husband.
Wife.
I'm a writer.
Photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
My kids.
Chrome. And I am a professional truck driver.
And together, we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us.
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.